Welcome back, everybody, to the fourth episode of the U Dayton Dialogues. Today, we're going to have Andrew intro our really freaking awesome guest. Andrew?
All right, thanks, Greg. Okay, so hello, listeners. Today, we're going to be joined by Dr. Barath Narayanan, who currently holds a joint appointment as a research scientist with Sensors and Software Systems Division at the University of Dayton Research Institute, and is also an adjunct faculty at the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering here at the University of Dayton as well. Dr. Narayanan earned his bachelor's in electrical and electronics engineering from SRM University in Tamil Nadu, India, and both his master's and doctorate in electrical engineering here at the University of Dayton. Dr. Narayanan's work has focused on the application of deep learning and machine learning algorithms to address a legion of different engineering and societal challenges. His work has been used in the detection of lung cancer, breast cancer, pneumonia, and even COVID-19, as well as for the improvement of machined parts made via additive manufacturing techniques. He's even been included as an expert panelist at the VAIB HAV Summit in 2020, where he was invited by the Prime Minister of India, and that was set up by the Prime Minister of India as well. So we are fortunate to have him on this podcast as both a representative of the University of Dayton graduate programs here in the School of Engineering, the University of Dayton Research Institute, and overall just a representative of research, innovation, and entrepreneurship here in the Dayton region. So we're very excited to interview and talk with Barath a bit more, and hopefully you all get to learn a bit more about him as well.
And not to mention, Andrew, Barath is the guy that taught me everything that I know about machine learning, deep learning, and AI. So,
man,
this is a really special guest for me. We go back, probably 4 or 5 years at this point. We've done a number of professional things together that have just been really, transformative, I think, certainly for my career. So, Barath, thanks for coming today, man. Thanks for coming.
Oh my God, thanks for the great introduction. I'm not sure if I deserve them all, but thank you so much for inviting me over. It's nice to meet you guys. Nice to get to know you, Andrew, and nice to see you back, Craig.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to start off today a little bit, getting to know a little bit more about you, Barath, a little bit more about your background.
Sure.
And this can be kind of whatever you're willing to share,
Sure.
Where you grew up, like your family, how you became interested in deep learning and in machine learning, and just whatever you're willing to share for our viewers.
Sure. I grew up until I was 9 in my hometown in India. It's called Trichurapalli or Srirangam. It's very difficult to pronounce. You guys don't have to try. So then after that, I moved to Bahrain. It's a country in Gulf. That's where my dad was working. So I was there for a few years. And then I got back to India, like a bigger city, for my high school. And then completed my high school there and my undergrad degree there. And then that's when Dr. Guru came to our university. And he selected me for a dual degree program with my University of Dayton. And that's when I came over here during my senior year, so that you can get to complete master's plus bachelor's in 5 years.
Oh, okay.
That's the program I got into, and that's how I came to UD. About my family, my dad was a professor towards the end, and I think you guys can guess the subject now. It was machine learning. And then my mom was a homemaker. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're excited to have you here, Barath, and especially bringing a very different perspective on engineering from our other guests. I think this is a great opportunity to learn more about what you do, and especially some of the more recent things that you're doing, which we'll get to it later, but talking about how you're actually using machine learning to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think that's very interesting to to learn about.
Yeah, Andrew, I think that's a great thing to click in on here. And maybe if we could thread in, Barath, sort of how, you kind of got inspired to pursue this field a little bit from your dad.
Sure.
And then, because this thing that kind of came out, this innovation is one of many, many things that you've ever worked on. So you've been up nights, weekends, all the time doing this how did you get so excited about this field? How did you really, come into this and say, okay, this is what I want to do. And then you go so hard. I mean, tell us what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated?
So I think it was early 2000, late 2000. That's when my dad was teaching machine learning at a university, and he used to tell me cool things about it, but I never got excited. Actually, I was being a typical teenager, never listened to any of the things that he told me. So then, unfortunately, he passed away when I was 19. But that's when, you go back home, you look into the books that he has read, what all he has done. So I was going through that. I mean, I was not into studies or anything, but I was just going through it. That's when I realized that the machine learning had a perfect balance of math and programming. I mean, right from my childhood, I always liked math and programming a little bit too. But when machine learning provided me the right balance, until then, I had a different perception about machine learning. It is just completely programming, and I don't like to code so much. It was all just coding. But then when I realized it is a perfect balance of math and programming, and it's about you applying that math and then applying it to your code. So that's what interested me, and that's how I got into this field. And I didn't get into it immediately as well. It was like a slow development, because as soon as I came here, I came from a master's program. I talked to Dr. Hardy. He asked me, do you know image processing? Do you know computer vision? He told me to read about all those, study all those, learn all those before getting into machine learning and pattern recognition, so that you get the basics right. So that's how I got into machine learning. And once I got into it, it was like, hey, you know what, I have this cool tool. Can I apply it? What all can I apply it to?
Yes. Okay. So I love this thread that you really loved math, and you were like, programming, that's cool, but it's not like my whole jam. Like, I'm not really all about programming. And I think that's where a lot of young engineers find themselves today, right? Is they're like, yeah, like I've really been good at math, but I haven't like been into my HTML, my internet browser since I was 11. Like, I'm not into it like that. And would you say, like, what was the first thing that you actually did get to program and you actually enjoyed it? I mean, when was that for you?
So in my undergrad, that was not great. There wasn't, since I wasn't into electrical engineering class, there was not a lot of programming. So as soon as I came to Dayton, during my dual degree course, I was actually asked to take a sophomore year course as a prerequisite for my senior class. And that's when I met Dr. Hardy, and I took Introduction to MATLAB Programming. That's the class I teach now. That's the class I was told to teach and learn at UD. So when I was learning that, I realized the fun about programming. I realized what all can be done using MATLAB, or what all can be done using programming. Like, okay, it's all about getting the logic right. And it's actually same thing that you have in math, right? So once you have the logic, it's about you transferring it into paper, or you transfer it into a code. That's it.
Yes.
It's that simple. So once he taught me, and he had a very cool project too. I think one of the projects was the green screen project. Right now, what Zoom is being used, like the background, right? So that was a project that we had. And basically, he told us to be creative. So we use Superman, Spider-Man animations and all those. So that was our final project. So that's when you developed something cool, and you're like, you know what, I can do this. It gives you that confidence. That's how I got into this. Yeah.
And it wasn't even until you were already in college taking classes this happened for the first time.
No, this happened for the first time when I met him.
Man, if you are listening, listeners out there, it does not have to be this thing that's been meant to be from birth. You can pick it up. You can use these tools. You can do it next month, next year. You can still do it. I mean, that's the great thing about half of this stuff, right? It's like, you don't need this huge depth of deep programming wisdom to use a lot of these tools. You really have to just kind of think, okay, well, what data am I using? What do I actually want to know? And it's more rooted in kind of the physics side of things than it is in the tool building programmatic side. I mean, that's kind of my take on it. I don't know what you think about that.
So the thing is, it's about, you need to know the basics behind what is happening.
Yeah. Right.
So I give this example to my class in my class for machine learning. It's like you need to know what tool you need to apply for what application. Like for example, if you're a carpenter and all you wanted is to hang a picture, you don't want to try all the tools that you have in your disposal and be like, you know what, this is the tool, because by then you would have broken the wall. So you need to think accordingly. You need to understand your data. You need to understand what exactly do you want to achieve from this data.
Yes.
Right now, with the open source being available, people are applying all the possible techniques for all the possible solutions.
Yes.
And then being like, you know what, out of 20, this the 19th one worked the best. Let me pick that and go further from that.
Yes.
And instead, if you understand the data, understand the basics behind that, understand the math behind it, it becomes much easier. You just go directly to that 19th tool.
Beautifully said. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that kind of, I mean, really that was always the difference that I noticed in you, that you were able to explain things so simply, and you always brought it back to like, okay, let's do the simplest possible solution. And I wonder if that's been, your experience as you were learning the tools. I mean, I see a lot of people doing things that are very, very complicated all the time. They're overdoing almost all of the things that they are doing. And, a lot of times, you and I worked on some stuff. It could be solved with image processing or with computer vision. It doesn't need machine learning. Like we get into these weird situations where, the boundaries between words we thought we knew start to blur. So, I wonder if this essence of boiling it down to a simplistic thing, is this something that you feel like really came out of that first class that you took? Or is this something you've really kind of self-developed?
I think I would have to credit two people for this. One is my dad, and that is Dr. Hardy. They always tell me that see the objective way, understand the problem, try if there's a simple solution, because then that's when you're thinking logically. You're trying to come up with a very simple solution for a simple problem. Everything need not be complicated, and you have to, whatever you do, you need to be satisfied with what you're doing. And you need to clearly understand why you're doing what you're doing. This is one thing Dr. Hardy always told me: crawl, walk, and then run.
Yes,
that's one thing.
Yeah,
because when I was a student, I used to be too excited to get the results as soon as possible. Hey, get done with it. Hey, publish a paper. I'm like, no, you know what? Develop it slowly. Crawl, understand what's the problem, understand the background, do the background research, understand what's being done, and then come up with your own idea. So I'd like to credit these two people for that.
So I do have a question about kind of, so you had started off, you said you had started off with this bachelor's and master's program that brought you to UD. I guess what I'm also curious about is you could have gotten your master's and gone on to do something else. So I'm curious, why did you choose to stay for a PhD at the University of Dayton? I guess what drew you to those kinds of that kind of research as well?
Yeah. So during my master's, I had the opportunity to do my thesis on image processing with Dr. Hardy. It was on super resolution. I learned a lot being as a student under him. Even now, when I send him an email about a research idea, you should see the excitement. The excitement, it's like a childlike excitement that he gets. And you want to work under such a professor like who gives you that excitement and encourages you to work on such things. And that was number one. And number two was I was also a graduate teaching assistant for UD during my master's. And I don't think in many universities you get the opportunity to teach and learn at the same time. Being a TA, like most of the universities, you probably be an RA where you focus a lot on research. That's good. Whereas this graduate teaching assistantship provided me that opportunity to. Initially, I was just being a TA. Then I became an instructor for the class. So I think they call it teaching fellow.
Okay.
So where I was teaching undergraduate classes during my PhD. So I got this opportunity to do this both at the same time. Okay. And plus doing PhD, during masters, after first project in masters, we decided to do a research on medical imaging, which was of high excitement for me. So that's when I was like, you know what? Okay, everything is falling into place. You know the place, first of all, you know people very well here. And most important thing during your PhD is your advisor. Your relationship with your advisor, your research work. That is very, very important. And see, you go to a great university or a different university, the thing is you do not know what relationship you will have with that professor. That university might be great or the professor might be great. It's just the relationship that you have with professor that is very, very important as well. So I was like, you know what, everything is here. Why should you want to go out of your comfort zone? Everything is good. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you get to learn something new as well, which is medical imaging. Which is different from what I did during my master's, and so that's how things fell into place.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And so, I mean, but really, let's kind of like, for the audience here, like, did you always know you were going to get a PhD? Did you always know you were going to get a master's? Like, you kind of, right? I mean, your dad was a professor, so I mean, you know, was there kind of like a thing growing up, like, okay, I'm probably going to get one? I mean, was that a thing for you, or maybe not so much?
Until the day I defended my dissertation, I wouldn't say I thought I'll get a PhD.
Oh, yes, I love that.
Yeah, because I was always, I mean, I was not 100% confident whether I'll be able to pull off my PhD. My dad identified it when I was in high school. He told me that you will do a PhD, but I thought like it was just too much, and because I was not into too many details until then.
Yeah.
It's about researching. It's about being patient.
Right.
I mean, I was not a patient kid at all. It's about being persistent as well.
Yes.
So during so it was like gradual process during my bachelor's, during the until third year, I was not even thinking of a master's program. So I'll tell you, I was actually playing, cricket is a sport that's being played in India a lot. So I was playing cricket on that day where one of my professors came to the ground. He told me there's a professor from the University of Dayton. Would you like to meet him? And I was like, okay, give me 5 minutes. Let me just get ready and come back. And I just met him. That's how the entire thing panned out.
Oh, wow.
If he didn't find me that day, I would have not even met Dr. Guru. So,
Man. Very cool.
So that's how master's thing came into picture. Even during my last year of master's, I was actually looking for jobs as well. But that time, I had this opportunity to choose between job or PhD. But one thing is, if I ever want to study PhD, and I don't think I'll be able to come back after a few years of working, I don't know if I would be in a mindset where, you will be in a particular job and you don't want to get out of the industry and go back, study, and then come back. I was not sure about it. I was like, let me just give it a shot and see what happens. The first 2 years was pretty hard as well. I took a lot of learning, a lot of background work, and after that things fell into place, and until the last moment I was a little nervous, but let's see, and everything panned out after that.
Yeah. Okay. So when a lot of people, if they ask you to be a teacher, GTA stat, a lot of people would say, no thanks. Or, did you know that you liked the teaching stuff, from a young age? I mean, did you kind of always enjoy that side of it?
I enjoyed that side of it right from I would say undergrad. I started enjoying that side of it. It was basically that I was this one friend. My friend used to call at the last moment and be like, hey, how do you write this particular problem? How do you solve this? I was like, okay, what, I'll do that. Because one of the advantage I got was I got to practice for my exam as well. And that was one thing. And people don't study everything, right? People want to study just the important questions.
Yeah, right.
But that was basically like the place where I would revise. So I started enjoying at that moment. And then when I got this opportunity with my professor, Dr. Hardy itself, I was like, what, let me see what it takes. And then that's how it, and then once I started teaching and I started enjoying more, to be honest, I started learning more.
Exactly.
Once I started turning, I discovered certain things that I might have not discovered if I was just coding it. So I was like, okay, why don't I teach it this way? Why don't I make it? So basically you will want to teach the students in a way that they will understand and they will find it cool.
Yeah. Right. That's the key, right? Yeah. That's the key.
That's when you discover new things about yourself. You think new things about the software, everything, and you bring in examples from your own life, and that's how everything panned out.
Right. Well, and that's sort of the essence, right? If you think it's cool, then fundamentally they're along for the ride with you if you've sparked them even just a little bit. And I love this idea of teaching gets you to actually learn the most. That's actually experienced deeply in my own life. You too as well, Andrew?
Yeah, I was just going to mention like that for me, when I was in undergrad, forming study groups, trying to help other students, and they would also help me on things I didn't understand.
Exactly, yeah. Yes.
Like all of that is what helped me really generate an excitement for a lot of this stuff. But then also, like in my lab, I have my graduate students, I try to partner them with undergrads. So that way they teach the undergrad what they're learning. So then they learn it better.
Oh, wow.
And then it excites the undergrad as well and gets them, a great opportunity. So I love that. I love that idea. I would say that I would have very similar experiences with that. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the way to do it, right?
Yeah.
You learn and then you teach and then you learn and then you teach and you keep going, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Otherwise you shouldn't have the job anyways. Like, come on. So, okay. Yeah. So, I think this is great. And kind of getting back to this thread line of, okay, all of a sudden you did this COVID stuff. And this is, obviously a very relevant time to sort of bring this up. Is like, okay, we're in the middle of another wave. So you did some COVID stuff. What exactly, this computer vision, machine learning, image processing thing, how did this transition through medical imaging to COVID exactly?
Oh, wow. It's a long story.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to it. Let's follow the line. Yeah, go ahead.
So I did my master's thesis on image processing, super resolution. I really liked what was going on, and I really liked the computer vision aspect of it. And that's when I started learning machine learning and pattern recognition from Dr. Vijay Nazari and Dr. Hardy at the same time. And they were teaching it great. And back, it was those days where they taught you the classical machine learning algorithms, not into the current deep learning ones, where they were all teaching about how do you engineer features. Like, for example, you want to distinguish between phones and laptops. What are the features that you come up with, the shape, the size, what are all the things that you will come up with as your, like, if you are able to distinguish between a laptop and a phone or a tablet. So that's how they made me engineer features. They made me come up with features on how do I distinguish it. Right. So the thing, what happened was Dr. Hardy was working on lung cancer detection, and he asked me if I would be interested in pursuing it during my PhD research. And I was like, yes, that'll be something great, because you will integrate all your image processing, machine learning, all computer vision, all the applications into one major application. And for lung cancer detection, they look for something called lung nodules on chest X-rays or CT scans, depending on the imaging modality. And what happens is that there are possibility of a false positive or a false negative during a radiologist study as well. Or it can also at least provide a second opinion to the radiologist to be like, hey, this looks like a nodule. Do you think so? The radiologist can obviously decline it, saying like, hey, no, it doesn't look like a nodule, but I understand why you see that, why you are thinking that way. But we didn't want to miss any nodules. That's the basic concept.
Oh, I see.
So that was the reason. And then that's when I started learning and developing algorithms. I think we engineered a lot of features. So it was those days of classical machine learning. We engineered a lot of features to distinguish to identify the nodules. And that's how I came into, and I worked a lot on, so it's not like one-step process. You just go look for nodules. You probably would apply some image processing so that all X-rays look the same way, because X-rays are captured in India, China, US, across different countries. They all have different voltages. They have a different like orientation and so on. You make sure that all of them are oriented correctly. You apply image processing techniques so that all of them are in the same space. And then you apply segmentation to segment the lung region to identify which part of the lung does it have and all those stuff, and to reduce your region of interest and so on. It's not like one. So what I thought was, okay, I have developed this all one step at a time. For when it came to COVID pandemic, and I got access to some data where people have marked that whether it was COVID positive or COVID negative. The person was. So I got access to that data. So what I thought was, I can apply some of these algorithms to this block, some of the blocks that I learned for lung cancer detection for this, and later apply certain new techniques that I have learned in the recent past, and see if we can identify COVID. That's how this entire thing came up. And so when I did this, I wrote it as a live script, and MathWorks, the company which provides MATLAB software, they saw this work of mine, and they asked me if they can publish a blog about the same on their website.
How did they exactly see the work?
So the thing is, for me, I have collaborated with them for malaria detection before this. And I think there was one more topic that I worked on with them because they follow my papers, they follow my work.
Okay, right.
I was doing this, and that's when they asked me, "Would you be willing to write a portion, like the work on some of the portion of this blog?"
Right.
I
Okay,
took
so the company that creates the programming language follows Barath's work. Just let's put a really sharp point on that for everybody. So let me see if we can recap this real quick. So you're saying that, you can take X-ray radiography scans of someone's body and someone's lungs, and you can detect little nodes on the lungs. And maybe the nodes on the lungs, maybe that means you have some probability of cancer. And so it's very important that we detect these.
That's nodules, yeah.
Yeah, nodules. Okay, right. Yeah. And so then you sort of put these algorithms together, handcrafting these specific features on how to get these specific nodules. And then you created all these algorithms that then like worked really well to find them. And then COVID came along and you were like, okay, well, I have these tools that like take this radiography scan and then convert it to an image and then detect all these nodules. And I'm going to try to apply that to COVID. I mean, did the COVID lungs have nodules, or is it more of something that you had to kind of just not really even do that with, but do something completely different with?
I was not looking for nodules on COVID. So basically, I was taking some portion of this algorithm. For example, the image processing part of it, where they're making sure that all the images look similar, that I took from that algorithm. Segmenting the lung, like accurately segmenting the lung, because most of the COVID cases are having the similar symptoms as viral pneumonia. That is number 2. And I also forgot to mention last Feb, just before this pandemic hit, I went to Texas to present a paper on pneumonia detection and diagnosis from X-rays, like looking at an X-ray whether a person has pneumonia. If yes, what type of pneumonia.
So you were right there with pneumonia already. Yeah. Okay.
It was in Feb, right? Just 1 month before the pandemic hit, actually. And even some of the people in the conference couldn't come because of the pandemic in China. From China. So what happened was I was like, okay, and then the data came through in March. Like that's when I didn't get too much data, but I got a little bit of data, and I was like, why don't I try applying this? It might work, it might fail. So what I did was I took portion of all these algorithms, put it all together for COVID-19. That's how things came into picture.
So were people talking about it at the conference?
So people were not talking about the pandemic. People were talking about the pneumonia and how it can be applied to other applications. So one of the interesting things until then where they had one architecture, one algorithm to identify whether it's no pneumonia, what type of pneumonia. What we did was we had individual architecture, whether to say yes to pneumonia or not, then to say what type of pneumonia, if yes. It was a 2-stage architecture that actually worked better than having a single stage architecture for everything. Okay. So that is how I was like, so that was the topic we had discussion about. We were thinking about how it's very difficult to distinguish between bacterial pneumonia and viral pneumonia looking at X-rays for the algorithm. It might be easy for a radiologist. So developing an architecture for that took us some time. And once we had that going, it became a lot easier for me to adapt that particular thing for code.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess just to kind of try to close this, it's like, okay, so I'm imagining the radiography image, and I'm imagining what a lung without COVID and a lung with COVID, and we'll put this up here in the podcast for everybody to see. I'm imagining what this looks like. Okay. And so you're going to compare one to the other. I mean, what is the number one thing that you're looking for here to say, okay, yes, COVID?
Something called lung opacities, which is looking in lung. That could be a COVID case, but also there are some cases where people have suffered from viral pneumonia, but not COVID-19. And viral pneumonia and COVID-19 looks extremely similar on X-rays as well. So I have to be very careful. So that's why more data we get, better our algorithm becomes. And the thing is to have access not only to the data, we need to have access to the radiologist markings. What does the radiologist think? That is something very, very important, because we can't simply blindly apply the data. We are not doctors ourselves to determine what kind of category it belongs to. So we'll have to design from scratch based on the radiologist markings. And there might be difference in opinion among radiologists as well. So we need to develop algorithms and make sure it works accordingly and according to their particular requirements. Because every doctor or every hospital will have certain requirements, will have some regulations, or will want them to assist in a particular way. The main reason behind this technology is to assist doctors. And so you have to make sure that you satisfy your customers. So you develop your algorithm accordingly. Yep.
I see. Okay. And so then this algorithm's actually taken and started to be commercialized, right? It started to be commercialized like after you made it in March, April, and then
yeah.
you're actually using it in a company now to try to look at other diseases like pneumonia and stuff like that, right? Is that sort of, to close this up, is that kind of the rest of February to now and kind of how that's unfolded?
Yes, there are a lot of, so they got access to a lot of data through their doctors, and so basically there were some portions of algorithm where they would be like, hey, this doesn't work at this situation or this particular patient. Can you suggest things like that? It's been going on. They have been applying even for COVID, right? It's not just the cases come from one particular country. It comes from a lot of countries, and now I think it's been 9 months since the pandemic hit all of us, and they have been able to get access to a lot of data across countries, so which helped them develop even more robust algorithms. And also, we also published a paper recently in October, and they're trying to incorporate that ideology into their technology as well.
Beautiful. Okay. Great tech transfer story. Okay. Yeah. Coming right out of the university. Good stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's just very interesting how you take this image processing tool to make the X-rays, make the images look uniform and better, and then apply that tool to, well, this current issue, this current pandemic. And so one thing I'm very curious about is I'm not a machine learning or deep learning person. So what I'm always interested in is trying to understand, how is it that you create an algorithm that learns? What are you how do you do it? And especially for the COVID-19, I mean, you were mentioning it a bit, where you're trying to look at the radiologist's notes on specific X-rays. How do you then train that algorithm to learn to pick up the same things or similar ideas that a radiologist would after a medical degree be able to pick up?
So it's I wouldn't say my algorithm is 100% accurate. It's a long way from that. But sure. It's like basically teaching a kid. How do you teach a kid alphabets? Show them 1,000 different pictures of A, 1,000 different pictures of C or B, all that characters. You make them learn, like you make them rehearse, you make them you keep reiterating. Once you keep reiterating it, that's when they'll be like, okay, it becomes fixed on their mind that that's B, this is A, this is C. And there might be places where someone else with a different handwriting, they might not be able to identify that it also is an A. So those are the cases where the algorithm might fail. So basically the idea is to teach. So basically you're not going to write 1,000 or 2,000 if-else statements saying that if this is there, and so on. You make the algorithm learn instead. You'll make it learn that particular pattern. Like for example, like if you want to make it learn between, it's easy to explain, like a laptop or a watch. You basically look into the size first. What's the size of the material? What's the area? What's the shape? You make it learn these 3 features. And once you learn these 3 features, and you're not going to show one laptop. You're going to show like 25,000 different laptops, different companies, different sizes, different models, open, closed, and so on. And similarly, you show all those pictures of cell phones, and you show it from the day it was invented to the current iPhone 12 Pro, whatever iPhone model is going on. And you'd show different characteristics. You show it being broken, it show it being in different colors, and so on. So algorithm will learn to, and you tell this, if you would like, you can also tell the features you want it to look for. So you basically make the algorithm being like, okay, you know what, cell phone, all these features like shape, size belong to this feature range. Things like of laptop belongs to this feature range. So it'll basically develop a line or a curve depending on how complicated or how easy the model is to distinguish the two classes. They call it categories like phones and they call it classes, but I'm just saying it two categories like phones and laptops. You basically develop a feature space where you can distinguish them and tell them, hey, if you belong to this feature space, you are a phone or you are a laptop, depending on that feature space. You basically teach them all the means, the variances, the range of features for each and every product. That's where like you can't teach features like, for example, let's say we have a feature which is saying electronic, yes or no. Both cell phone and laptop, it's going to be yes. So that's not going to be a useful feature for you in your case to distinguish it. So you have to come up with features that you think will be good to distinguish the two classes. That could be one approach. Another is applying certain deep learning techniques, like visual based, that can be applied to identify the pattern on its own. So currently what happens in deep learning techniques is that you show a lot of images of each particular category. You show like millions of images. And basically the algorithm learns and finds its own pattern in distinguishing that. Until 2012, 2011, it was the machine learning engineer who used to design features, like handcrafted, like how I did for my lung cancer detection and so on. And after the current deep learning techniques, you show a lot of images of particular application and be like, hey, you find the pattern for me and identify which category it belongs to. And now then you also, that's why the AI explainability comes into picture. So that's when you go back and be like, what did you learn that made you say this? So and so. So this process of making the algorithm learn is called as training, where you basically optimize the weights of the system accordingly so that you're able to identify which class it belongs to.
Okay. So Barath, I love this feature space idea. And you keep saying features and handcrafting features. And then you say deep learning learns the features on its own. And so I guess, one of the things that I think is always so confusing to folks, there's this razor's edge that exists between handcrafting features and then the algorithm learns the features by itself. And so I wonder, we're talking about always go back to simplicity. Can you explain the AI to me, please? Like, is it actually learning something that's real? Do you really need to see a convergence of learned features, and they need to really align with what a human might handcraft on the other side? And that's sort of like fundamentally what we're talking about when we say we're approaching human level performance, right? Is that a correct interpretation? And where's the AI is going to learn stuff we don't know come into play? Where does that come into play exactly?
So for example, let's say we're developing this COVID algorithm. Let's say all the COVID patients were taken from one hospital images and all the non-COVID came from another hospital, and both of them had different scanner settings. Imagine the algorithm is looking at the borders of the image and telling you belong to COVID category or non-COVID category. That's not what the algorithm you want. Then you want the algorithm to look into the lung or whatever that particular place and be like, hey, this is the region that made me decide that this patient belongs to COVID category or not COVID category. You want the algorithm to learn something relevant to that application. So basically, in that particular hospital, there are borders in the image and it's learning that borders and telling you, hey, these are all from COVID, then it is not right.
So this idea that you can do magic with deep learning, that it can solve any problem that even we can't outline a programmatic solution for. Like this idea that AI was rule-based and then we got machine learning and that was feature-based. And now we don't need rules or handcrafted features. We can just deep learn everything. Is that that's not true, right? You have to go one step at a time. Right? There's no magic here, is there?
So even if you make the deep learning algorithm learn, you need to know what it learned. You need to be able to explain its output. That's what we also do in our papers, is that once we publish a paper, we tell, okay, this is the region that made the algorithm take this decision. Because that is very, very important. Or this is the features that made the algorithm take this decision. Or these are the feature range. The reason is because you want the user to have the insights. Because all these tools are just there to provide assistance. And And in case, in case something, you say something to Hey Siri and Hey Siri pops up, that's when you'll be like, okay, you know what? It's a reason is because you said something very similar and it picked it up.
Right, right.
So
right.
you will be like, okay, you know what? Okay, I understand why it did that.
Right.
So you need to understand the output for the end user, the customer, whoever is using the AI product, to understand that output
I see. Okay.
rather than blindly applying it for their own application.
Okay. And this kind of gets back to the whole, you like the science part and the understanding the concepts part, but you also like the programmatic, develop the tool, crunch out the data part. And I think, this is where I see everybody needs to have sort of a split brain on this at some point in the not too distant future here, right? We have to be able to have a domain that we want to pick and look at and make our own. And then we also have to have a set of tools that we can use. And some of them are with a computer now, right? It's kind of like your car or something. Like you need to have some of these tools. I mean, what are some of the ways that you would encourage students to think about? It's like, how to pick a thing and then how to pick the right tools to be able to look at data from that thing. I mean, because I believe, we're going to have AI sort of some level of Microsoft Excel level, AI powered level, ability that's sort of ubiquitous among students here within a few years. I mean, what do you think about this? What do you tell your students to try to find something that really excites them?
So first is the need, the necessity. What is the application that you wanted to apply to? And the second thing is first, in the class I teach, basically I start from from linear regression. That's the first thing you will learn in any AI. How does an algorithm learn to draw a line between points? That's the thing you start off with, because once you understand that, everything else becomes easier as you develop one step at a time. So basically understand what is happening, how are the weights getting adjusted, how are the things getting modified, how are the algorithm getting modified so that for it to learn new data points as we go. How can we make the algorithm computationally efficient? That is also important, because let's say you develop such a cool algorithm but it can't be put in your own computer but can be used only in a supercomputer.
Right.
That is also important, right? You have to make sure the algorithm can be deployed in that particular instrument that you want it to be deployed at. It can be even a Raspberry Pi, or it could be even any instrument that you want it to deploy to. So you have to think all these along all those directions, and then develop an algorithm according to its needs, and then also provide that reasonable accuracy. For example, for COVID, some people might give more importance the time faster. Yeah, you need to have a perfect balance between accuracy and speed as well.
Right.
Let's say your algorithm is 100% accurate, but it gives you a result after 6 days.
Right. Yeah.
But
Right.
if your algorithm is 99% accurate or 99% with minimal false positive, but gives you a result in 20 seconds or 20 minutes, you'll probably prefer that. And things like that. That's when you go up and down and go back. And it's like a operating point that you want to choose.
Okay.
So from your research, what I'm seeing from this is that you have all of these tools that you're learning how to use and you're teaching your students how to use. And then kind of where do they apply them? Like other than just drawing a line, where else can they be applied? I mean, your research, everything you've done is in many different fields. We've got fields from disease detection like COVID-19. You've also published work related to investigating the part quality of parts made by laser powder bed fabrication. So I'm just very curious, where do you direct your students to gain experience in these things, and where do you want to keep investigating? What's the next frontier for you? If you beat COVID-19, what else is there, right?
I don't think it can be that easy, but see, thing is, one of the other projects that I work on with my students during the class itself is on cybersecurity. Okay, so interesting thing was when I came across that project, and cybersecurity had bunch of malware programs, which I've never ever seen in my life. I don't know how it looks. So what happens was we at University of Dayton with a couple of other researchers, what we developed was we developed an algorithm of visualizing malware programs. We gave images to those malware programs and made them look like images. Those images might not make sense to us, but can make sense to the algorithms.
Interesting.
So it is a very interesting that was an work because we have worked in the field of image processing, and all these malware programs are basically codes. All these are programs. So we basically converted those into our comfort field of image processing.
I love this because I've got an anecdote here, Barath, if you don't mind. The first time I ever started working with Barath and his team over at UDRI, I kept trying to give them, it was on this laser metal powder bed stuff that Andrew mentioned just a minute ago. This is 3D printing of metal. And we took all these scans during the builds and we said, hey, machine learning guys, like we need some help. Like, can you help us apply some of these awesome tools to these scans? And they were like, oh yeah, no problem. Just send over the scans. So I try to get all these scans together and send them over. And they keep coming back to me. They're like, no, send us pictures of the scans. And I'm like, what do you mean pictures of the scans? Here's the scans. What are you talking about? And it's not a picture, but you can visualize it just fine. Just run the code. There's the scan. And they're like, no, we need pictures of the scans. And I was like, you need me to take a picture of the scan that I just gave you? It has all the actual data, but you want a picture of it. You don't want the data. And they're like, yeah. That's what we do. We're picture guys. And I was like, okay. And I finally did it. They get back to me within like a day and they're like, yeah, okay, 100% accuracy. Bam, here you go. But be careful, ABC, XYZ. And I thought, oh my God, like really, I was unable to connect the fact that they needed pictures going into their algorithms. And it's this amazing sort of idea that whether you have raw data in a spreadsheet, or you have sort of like noise data or data about words or data about sounds, anything, if you can convert it to numbers, then you can convert it to a picture and you can use these algorithms with Barath. And so I think that this is such an incredible thing that people don't often put a sharp enough point on. And I'm glad you brought it up, Barath. So, I wonder, one of the things I wanted to try to do, I want to put both of you on the spot a little bit today here, Andrew and Barath. And I wanted to kind of pretend, okay, Barath is going to be Andrew's consultant here because Andrew, as you mentioned, he's not a machine learning expert, right? But Barath is. And so if you got Barath services, you might say, hey, I'm working on this problem, ABC, XYZ, whatever. What do you think I could apply to? And I wonder if we can find something to do with pictures. I don't know. What do you guys think? Can we find something? Can we do some research here in real time together? Andrew, what have you got for him to noodle on here first?
I actually have one.
Okay.
Already.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. So in my field, we do something called flux mapping, where we are taking pictures of a reflective surface and we're correlating the intensity from the image that the camera has taken. We correlate that intensity to a heat flux, or watts per meter squared. So we'd use that for concentrated solar, where we're trying to, position our reactors at the focal point. So where the concentration is highest, we try to position that there. We try to optimize heliostat fields or our concentrating facility, whatever it is, to achieve a desired concentration ratio at that focal point. So we're trying to concentrate as much radiation as we can to a specific point to then use for our reactors and receivers. And so I've done a little image processing in the past where, we're taking those pictures and trying to create maps of those things. But one big challenge is optimizing an entire heliostat field, hundreds or thousands of mirrors, optimizing them to create the desired concentration ratio or a desired shape for that radiation. So big challenge. Lots of people looking into it. I don't even know where I would begin. If I had all these pictures, because if I have a facility and I have the pictures of, if I have these pictures, what do I do with that? How do I take that and apply something very different foreign to me? Machine learning, deep learning.
For example, based on the description that I understood, it could be like something like an object detection software, but in this you're looking for the concentration region software. Like, for example, let's say you have such a huge image, you want to find the location where the highest thing is there. You can come up with a software that can identify the bound. It can draw a bounding box and say that, hey, this is the spot where maximum concentration is being present, and go on from there. It's like finding where the nodule is in that chest X-ray. It's basically, the ideology is the same. It's about applying a different math-oriented programming, which is machine learning, and applying it to this here. So we can look at, it's not just, by the way, it's not just pictures. We can always look into numbers and identify trends. We can also look into essays and identify what is happening. We can apply natural language processing tools and things like that. One of the recent papers that I worked with a student was on video captioning. It's to caption what is happening on the video, looking at it, and to say like, hey, this is what is happening. This person is riding a bicycle, or this person scored a goal. So we're working on such, and for that, the data we collected is from Facebook and Instagram captions. I mean, it was not just that, but we collected data from that as well. Because you get a lot of information, right? People are saying, hey, I am at this location enjoying whatever. So you collect data from that.
So it sounds like as long as there's pictures and supporting data, you can solve whatever issue.
I wouldn't say whatever, but we can try. We can definitely give it a shot.
You know, so I love this idea, you know, like everybody sort of like that doesn't use the machine learning tools. Like, you know, a lot of people, they kind of say, well, it's just stupid anyways, because it's just, you know, like a linear regression. It's just like a simple tool, and you're not really getting much, you know, like Andrew, maybe, you know, Andrew's sitting here. Okay. I can look at the intensities. I can draw that shape. Okay. Yeah. But where's the value add here? And I mean, by the way, also, I'll just point out to all of our listeners here, if this kind of thing interests you, you should seriously probably consider talking to Andrew or Barath about master's or PhD type stuff. Because I mean, this is the stuff of a master's or a PhD project, is this exact thing that they talked about right here. And so this is the kind of stuff that happens here on the U Dayton Dialogues. and I think this is exactly what I wanted people to see, because this is also the same thing as doing data science consulting, right? Which I've done, you know, quite a bit of, and you basically do the same thing at UDRI. You kind of say, okay, what's the problem that you'd like us to solve? Yeah, we can probably solve that for you. And, you know, I think that it's so powerful to have these tools and to have that ability, and to be able to say, hey, here's what we can do with them, and here's what we can't do with them. So, you know, I think, and it was also great, Andrew, that, you know, you lay out a thing, you say, hey, these tools, well, I'm looking at maybe using them. What could I do? We get some top level feedback from the image guy. Hey, we'll use images, right? Okay. So how do we then convince Andrew that maybe he should use images if, you know, he's like, well, it's just like linear regression, right? I can get the intensity, I can do it myself. You know, how can I take it to the next level and actually try to get some real value out of this for my project, right? How can we take it to the next level on the cell?
So 2 things that he can get value of his own time. Like, because instead of him manually marking all those things, leave the algorithms, it might not be as accurate as Andrew is, but it can at least provide a reasonable performance and saves us time by half.
Hey, I'm all about saving time here. I got too many projects I'm juggling. I need to save time.
It's like your TA grading your assignments.
Yes.
It gets the job done for you, and it gives you the result what you think, and then you can have a look at it and be like, hey, I agree with your decision here, but you know what, I don't agree with your decision. This is the reason behind it. And you make the algorithm keep learning. So that's where you go to retrain it and be like, hey, you know what, why don't you adapt your architecture accordingly first? Second thing is, in case there's in your marking and you might miss something, and your algorithm picks it up and tells it, hey, no, this is the spot actually you should have concentrated on, not something else. It can provide you that second opinion. It can help you avoid certain mistakes that you might have not noticed it, because it's like nobody's checking us do the work, right? It's like somebody's providing a free second opinion to us. And it's good, always good to have a second opinion. It's as long as they don't contradict every time. Always good to have a second opinion and be like, make sure that we don't make a mistake. That is always good time. And then also, right, more diverse at guess. And one more thing is that instead of teaching another student on how to mark that particular thing, which might take probably a month or so, you can teach the student to use this algorithm accordingly, which might take few days. And make modifications accordingly. So,
all right, that's how it's done, people. That's how it's done, right there. That was beautiful. Okay, Barath, I think one of the things that kind of I wanted to end on here is you continue to work on all this stuff. Okay, you continue to be a research institute guy. You are advising this startup, and now you're still teaching. What continues to drive you to keep your hand in both the teaching side and the research side? And what can students expect from you here at UD in the next coming couple of years?
Wow, it's a big question. One advantage of working in research and teaching at the same time, it's like I'm learning something from the university, I can apply it to my teaching. Or while I'm teaching something, I get to learn something new, I can apply it to the industry. It's like this process, it's like goes hand in hand. And I can transfer the knowledge from one to the other. Transfer learning.
Transfer learning. Yes. Well, and as you teach and teach and teach and teach, you learn.
Yeah, I keep
doing that for. I mean, we can all expect you to keep doing that at least for the next season, the next year or so, right? I mean, you'll be around teaching the same course. Is that what we're all to expect?
Yeah, hopefully depends on what the AC department thinks. But yeah, hopefully I'm able to teach the same courses, or like I'm adapting those courses accordingly. But because the programming has changed a lot in the last few years, the way people think of programming and the way people think of coding has changed. I think anything can be Googled these days.
Yes.
So we have to make sure that we teach them the right way so that they think first before Googling.
Yes. Well, you keep fighting in the ECE department. I'll keep fighting in the ME department. Let's get the word out on how important it is to know some of these programming concepts and the effect that they're going to have on our lives, all of our lives moving forward.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Really great to have had you today, man.
Thank you so much for the invite. It was a pleasure meeting you guys. It was a great experience.
Yeah. We really, we'd love to have you back again before too long, man. You've been a great guest. Andrew, I don't know if you want to go ahead and close it out for us.
I think that's all I want to say. I just want to say thanks again, Barath, for taking the time to talk to us, educating me a little bit more about machine learning. Again, it's a thing that I never had really thought about for my field, but after these discussions, I'm really seeing that there's a lot of applications. There's a lot of potential to use these tools in order to solve these problems. And so one big thing I want to leave the students with is to learn a bit from Barath here he's learned skills and tool sets that he can apply to solve many different engineering and societal problems. And so that's what you get with, learning these skills. You're developing tools that you can use to do what you're interested in.
Love it. That's a great place to put a point in it, Andrew. Barath, you got final thoughts you want to share with everybody? No? We're good to go? Okay. All right. Sending you off, everybody.